Sorry, everybody, I just realized I had my microphone muted. Not a good start to today's webinar, but thanks for joining us for Change Management and Emotional Intelligence Lessons Learned in Consulting. My name's Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by the BU Alumni Association and is offered to our 300,000 alumni around the globe. With BU Industry Insiders, the Alumni Association highlights successful Terrier thought leaders showcasing their work on emerging trends and advancements in fields that BU alumni work in. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to all of you later today. Please know that we really do value your opinion on this in every program that we offer. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box that you see at the bottom of your screen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Presenting from Danvers, Mass. is founder and president of Gillis Consulting and two-time BU School of Education grad, Melisa Gillis. Melisa is a dynamic and energetic consultant with over 25 years of successful facilitation in the fields of culture change, strategic planning, and organizational development with a focus on aligning leaders, teams, and organizations. As an active partner with leaders, she works as a coach with individuals, teams, and organizations through customized trainings and workshops. Her approach includes partnering with her clients to ensure a methodology that satisfies building relationships while soliciting the knowledge and wisdom of people to create sustainable solutions. Melisa has successfully partnered with key stakeholders both as an internal and external coach and consultant, implementing change initiatives that have achieved significant results in manufacturing, finance, and academia, as well as scientific research and development. Melisa, thanks so much for being here today. I got your slide deck up, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds great.
Okay. So thanks, Jeff, and thank you all for joining us for this opportunity to share some lessons learned over my 25, 30 years of facilitating individual, team, and organizational growth. I've had the privilege of, as Jeff said, working both internally and externally. As a leader and partnering with leaders who are initiating change, and I am really delighted to share my learnings with you here today. I'm going to ask Jeff to launch our first poll. So this is the audience participation part, and I would love to get a sense of why are you here today. So if you could just click on one of the buttons, then that gives me a sense of who's on the call and will help me as I speak. I'm not going to change a whole lot, but it'll at least give me a sense of who I'm talking to, and we'll give another 15 seconds or so to get a sense of who's on our call. So we have quite a spread, Jeff, of people on this call. We've got folks who are immersed in change, trying to figure it out. We've got some seasoned consultants who probably could be doing this webinar themselves, supporting clients, and a few folks in between. Let's give folks another 5 seconds, Jeff. Great. That's great. Thank you very much. That gives me a sense of who's there. And for those who didn't get a chance, that's fine. We're not going to change a whole lot. So what I would say is strap in your seatbelts. I'm going to give you a lot of information. The stuff that I cover we could do in multiple days of a workshop. I'm also going to go high level. We're going to skim the surface of some concepts that we could dive deep into any one of them, but I'm trying to make connections across sort of a large high level here. So my apologies to anyone who English is a second language, or for folks that I'm speaking too rapidly for, but know that Jeff is recording this, so if you do miss something and you want to go back, you can do that, or you can also get in touch with me. There'll be a slide at the end with my contact information. So what do we know about change? Well, if I were to ask you that in a classroom setting, probably many of you would say that change is constant, and we know that that is the case. Jeff, I can't move my slide forward. There. Thank you. Oh,
Do you want to try one more time,
no,
Melissa? I'm not sure what the problem might be.
I don't know either because we did this just fine
Yeah.
before.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know it'll be a pain, but just give me a cue when you want me to move the slides forward and I'll take care of that.
All right, then we will do that. That's unfortunate. Sorry, folks. All right, so yeah, so the only thing that is constant is change, and that's 25-year-old sage wisdom there for us. We know it continues to speed up every year. It's estimated that a week's worth of New York Times data today contains more information than someone came across in a lifetime in the 18th century. And that's not going to slow down anytime soon, we don't think. We've also got, this other thing that we know change is certain. Buy-in is not. Creating buy-in is difficult work, and for those who can do it effectively and do it well, it creates an enduring competitive advantage for folks. So let's go to the next slide, please, Jeff. So introduce me to your organization. As I mentioned, I've been working with change on the individual and organizational level for a number of years. And in all of the time that I've worked with all of my clients, I have never yet met an organization. And I've never yet seen an organization change. Actually, it's the individuals that I've seen that change one at a time, and they decide whether they're going to change based on any number of factors, including the one that we all sort of look at and work with, which is what's in it for me. And so we want to look at that a little bit throughout the course of this presentation. Could you hit the advance? So we really want to look at the individuals within the organization and take a look at how do they change. So we go to the next slide, please, Jeff. So the webinar goals, as Jeff and I talked about this, it seemed like, given the lessons that I have learned over the years, there's three pieces that I wanted to share. One was to review a few common change models. I'm certainly not going to cover all of the ones out there. There are plenty of them out there, and many of them are of high quality. We're just going to touch on three. We talk about how we as humans transition through change and what that means, and what does that mean for us to be aware of when we're implementing change initiatives, and then also understanding the critical role that emotional intelligence plays in successful and sustainable initiatives around change. And one of the metrics widely used in measuring organizational change and where do we need to get to is that 60% buy-in, so that once we get to that level, we know that we've got enough people and enough commitment and enough momentum that we're changing culture, and we want to put systems and procedures and processes in place. Change can start anywhere in an organization, and we've seen that in a number of different organizations. It might start in a small team somewhere and grow. What we do know is that we do need some senior leadership support around resources to pay attention to that in order to help make that happen. Next slide, please, Jeff. So what we do know is that change will happen, and this slide is just to set a little bit of context. This is from George Land's book, Grow or Die, and his premise is that all organisms and organizations move through this same growth pattern, and there are three phases. Phase one being what one might look at as a innovation or entrepreneurial startup phase, where things might not be quite as productive at first, but then they kind of start to ramp up, and we start to see some progress over time. And then phase two really is where maturity starts to happen for the organization, some constancy, some success, some procedures and policies come in place. And then as the organization continues to be successful, at some point, change will impact that organization. It might be external. So if you're a buggy whip maker, along might come vehicles, and so you've got an external stimulus that might create some need for change, or it might come from the internal, whether it's employees or people changing or things changing internally within the organization. And what we know is that phase three comes along, and you have a choice. You have a choice as to, do we re-enter phase one and make some changes within how we're doing things and innovate and make some things different? Or do we become irrelevant and die off as an organization? So, given that, what we know is that change will happen and that at some point we're going to need to address that. And we know that regardless of the stimulus for change, we need to take a look at how do we change? How do we as individuals and organizations change? So if you could hit the next slide, please, Jeff. We know that people and organizations change in one of three ways. So we've got crisis. The good news is it's quick. Often we have no choice about it, so we're going to just get to it. So taken from the headlines of today, we look at Volkswagen, for example. They have pretty big crisis right now, and so they have to address it. The bad news is it costs a lot more money, and people can sometimes get hurt in the process. Another way is to adapt. The good news around adapting is if we wait for someone else to get out there and go first, someone else is paving the way, it's a bit safer. The bad news is that we could be fourth in line, and that's that we might never actually make it to a place where we're as successful as we'd like to be. If we're anticipating change, the good news for that is we have the potential for big market share. And I think if we look at, for example, Apple, they certainly were able to anticipate before people even knew what they wanted, some things that we wanted. The bad news is it could be cutting edge and you might not actually survive it because you might be at the wrong time or it just might not play out the way you're hoping for that. So regardless of how that change is stimulated, we make a decision. We have to make a change within the organization. We need to choose a model. So next slide. So where do we start? Where do we look for the change model? And what I would say is there are a number of them out there. Again, I'm going to highlight three. And I would say look at your industry, look at what's going on in your organization, and figure out what's most important for you folks, what's going to fit for you, and do your homework. So next slide, please. So the common change models that we're going to look at, know that you're going to find some common components within them. They may be called something different. They may be approached a little bit differently. But for example, you notice that some of them have a rationale built in. You need to create the rationale for the need of change and looking for creating some motivation. Another common need you'll see is a need for vision and direction. Where are we going? It's going to be nice to know if we're going to make some changes, where are we going to try to get to? And then creating dissatisfaction or creating some disruption that the status quo is not okay anymore. So you'll see some real common components across the change models that you'll see. The goal, however, for all of them is the same. You want to create a roadmap that's going to help you figure out what are the key components we need to put in place from an organizational perspective. They're going to help us get to that magic 60% buy-in where we're looking to have some culture change. We're looking to have an organization that is getting to what we want to be our new normal. So let's briefly look at three different change models. The first one on the next slide would be Kurt Lewin's change model. And Kurt Lewin, this model is from the 1950s. And one of the benefits and nice aspects of this particular change model is that it's simple and clear to understand. You've got three phases. You've got unfreeze. We want to create some motivation to change, and we want it to be different than it is. Then we get to, we're in the change aspect. We're needed to communicate that and empowering people to embrace that change. And then we want to refreeze into our new organization, whatever that looks like, wherever we're trying to create. One of the challenges with this model is that it can be, it is so simple, and yet you've got pieces beneath each one of those sections that you need to work on and dive a bit deeper. So under unfreeze, for example, determining the need for change and what needs to change, ensuring that there's strong support from upper management, creating the need for change. So making sure that if you choose this model that you understand there is some rigor involved and making sure that you dive deeper into it so that you get the steps done that need to get done to really help be effective in that. On the next slide, you'll see that it's the change formula. And I think this is a build, Jeff, so go ahead and build until you see the multiplication signs. So just, yeah, keep going. And so this is the change formula that, as you can see down in the right, the source is started with David Gleicher, and then Kathy Dan Miller took his model and made it a lot simpler and easier for folks to uh, embrace and understand and use. And again, what's nice about this particular change formula is that it's fairly simple to understand. It's very easy to communicate. The vision, where are we going? What do we need to be doing differently? Where do we need to be? The process, how are we going to get there? What are the first steps we need to put in place? Let's get concrete about how we're going to get there. And then the discomfort piece, which is, again, that disruptive piece, which is status quo is not okay. We have to do something different. It's not just that we have a vision, we want to get there. Why am I going to buy into this? I as humans, we like our comfort zone, if you will. And so making sure that you have all three of those pieces in place are critical in order to overcome the resistance. And what you will find is that sometimes you'll have two out of the three, and it won't work. It just does. It's going to be one of those initiatives that fails, unfortunately. And on the next slide, you'll see Kotter's 8-step process for leading change. And Dr. John Kotter is a professor emeritus at Harvard Business School. It's a consulting firm, and his change management model is several of the benefits of his include focusing on the buy-in of employees as a focus for success. He's got some clear steps which can give guidance for the process, and it really fits well into the culture of classical hierarchies of organizations. He also has a lot of resources available online. He's got a change scorecard that you can use within your organization, and he's got several books and YouTube, a bunch of short YouTube video clips which are very accessible for folks. One of the limitations of his is that it clearly is top down, and depending upon how you apply some of the stages, it for some folks can feel a little bit like they're not really participating in that process. So one of the pieces that I would say, regardless of which change model you end up using, one of the pieces that is, from my experience, is really critical is that you stay the course all the way through. So it's, I think, very tempting for people to get from, you starting with create a sense of urgency, you see on the slide. And you go through building your coalition. Then you've got a strategic vision with some initiatives. Then you enlist your volunteer army of folks who are going to help be advocates and help make this start to happen. And then you remove some barriers. And then between 5 and 6, a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders will, you've got some competing priorities and start to shift and feel like the momentum is going. And that's where we see a lot of change initiatives start to sag or fall apart, is because the sustaining acceleration and instituting the change, embedding it within, integrating it within the organization systems and processes doesn't happen. And so I would say that that's a key to success, regardless of which model you end up choosing to use within your organization. And I was fortunate enough to be part of DuPont Fiber's 22,000 employee, 3+ years corporate culture change initiative in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the critical pieces of, I think, of success for that program was they embedded celebrating success and sustaining the acceleration and instituting the changes within the organization long after the consulting group was gone, and they really applied all of those steps, and the ROI definitely played out for them at the end. Once we've chosen a model and we implement it and we have success, well, maybe not so fast. On the next slide, you'll see, again, up to 70% of change initiatives fail. And 29% of them, Ken Blanchard's research shows that 29% of them are launched without any formal structure whatsoever. And so it can be a tough road if you don't have a model, and yet let me let you in on a little secret that I think it's not quite so secret to most of us, which is that organizations don't change, people do. And so we can have the best change model and the best roadmap and put all of the things in place that we think are going to help. But if we're not connecting with our people and we're not understanding what's going on with them, because they are who's going to change after all, not the organization, it's going to be tough to make that happen. So I'm going to, let's try a little experiment. I'm going to ask you to put down whatever's in your hands and follow my instructions. I'm going to ask you to shake out your arms, and you've probably done this 1,000 times. And then just fold your arms and take a look down at whether your fingers are outside of your arms or if they're tucked inside of your arms, and notice how that feels. And then unfold your arms, please. Shake them out. And now I'm going to ask you to fold them the opposite way as you had them before. So if you had two hands with your fingers under your arms, then this time they'd be out and your opposite arm would be on top. And then, Jeff, we have a poll that we want to ask people how that feels. So not the second one, but the third question. I skipped the second one. So if you could just type in one word that answers, how did that feel when you folded your arms the second way? What were the feelings that you had? Yeah, those are exactly the words that we often see. It's awkward, it's weird. So if you could, strange, uncomfortable, different, yes, challenging, not as funny as I thought. I love that comment. Yep, yep, exactly. All right, so Jeff, could we go to the next slide, please? And then go to the next one. Thank you. So yeah, so awkward, strange, weird, uncomfortable, different. So as soon as we left that comfort zone of our arms being folded in a really comfortable way, all of a sudden I asked you to do something different and you went right back. And what happens when we do this exercise in a workshop or in a classroom is we'll ask folks to do that, and as I ask people how it felt, they're already unfolding their arms because it's uncomfortable and we don't like that. So as you think about what did you need to do in order to actually implement that change in your arms, you had to, the question I would ask you, and I think it's already on the screen, you would probably answer is, we needed to think. I needed to actually think about how was I doing it the first way, because it was so unconscious that I needed to do it differently. So the key to successful transition between the way we've always done something to something new and different is going through what we call a neutral zone or a transition. So the next slide, please. You'll see that based on William Bridges' best-selling book, Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change, he talks about how change is an event that happens, and transition is our psychological response to it. So, looking at the fact that I would submit to you that people don't change, that we transition. If we look at this model and look at how do we do that? That's the question, right? Is how do we transition if I'm being asked in an organization to do something that's awkward, strange, weird, uncomfortable, and different? If I asked you to come with me to do that, how many of you would raise your hand and say yes? Well, some of my friends on the on the webinar might come along with me, but most folks won't, because we like that comfort zone. We don't typically put ourselves into that situation. So, quick poll here. We're going to ask the question, we're going to ask you to fill in one word to the answer of, fill in this question, sorry, this sentence. Change done to us is blank. It's one word answer, just real quick. Let's see what you've got. Change done to us is wrong. It's demotivating, it's hard, it's horrid. I love these words. Threatening, mandatory, yep, it better be justified. Yeah, I hear that. Imposing, upsetting, confusing. Right. So for those of us who are the recipients of someone saying, hey, it's time to change, that's going to be uh, it's going to be all of these things that you guys are writing: jolting, wrong, hard, off-putting, upsetting. So is that the way you want to have your folks in an organization feeling if you're implementing a change initiative? If you're the leader, that I would assume that you don't want people feeling those things. So the next poll, part answer to, or fill in the blank, change done by us is blank. What's your one-word answer? Yes, empowering, exciting, liberating, satisfying, exciting, awesome, rewarding, yeah, gratifying, embraced. It still can be hard. Absolutely. It still can be risky. Absolutely. Change, we don't have a guaranteed outcome for it. Liberating, better. Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at getting 60% buy-in when we're doing change, we really want to help understand how we can help people transition from what we used to be to where we want to be, the future state. We want to help through that neutral zone where things are awkward and strange and weird. And so it's a way of really looking to understand how people transition is crucial as part of making change initiatives happen. So go on to the next slide, please. So we're going to dig in a little bit into human transition. I'm going to share a little bit more about Bridges' model with you. So on the next slide, this is just another sort of intro slide into the discussion of transition. But again, organizational change, it's structure. We make a decision. We change things. We change processes, we change how things are done, but the transition is what happens to us as humans, and it's not a rational formula, and it's something that we need to understand that we are fallible human beings, and it's a psychological process that we go through. And so as leaders, or as people who are a part of going through that process, it's important to understand that that's what we're going through, that we are experiencing this transition. So anybody who has tried to make any changes in their behavior, whether it's losing weight, stopping smoking, or whatever it happens to be, we know that it doesn't often happen overnight. There's a transition. So on the next slide, what we'll see is the beginning of the introduction into Bridges' model of sort of this 3 phases of transition. We've got letting go, the neutral zone, and the beginnings stage. So if you imagine you're on a trapeze and you're swinging on the first trapeze bar and you've got both hands on, it feels pretty comfortable. You know what's going on. You've got your hands solid. In order to get to the next trapeze, you need to do what? You need to let go. So you have to let go of the first one in order to be in the air going towards the second one. And so while you're in the air, that's that neutral zone. And then you grab onto the second bar and you've got your new beginnings, your new state, essentially where you are. And so if you think about it that way, I think there's a bit of a visceral sort of connection to what it's like to be in that awkward, weird, different neutral zone. The black line that you see with all of those words, that's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's it comes from her stages of change, and it's just mapped over William Bridges here, and it gives you some words to attach with what is going on emotionally for folks in each of those phases. So in the letting go phase, if I'm feeling all of those things, before I go through the neutral zone. Once, if change is being done to me, that makes perfect sense, especially given the words that you guys were just identifying as change is done to us. And so, what do we do with that? We need to understand that each person is going through their own transition phases on their time, right? People make transitions in the time that works for them and what's important to them. So let's look at some questions that you can use either for yourself or if you're working with others who are going through some change that can help them with the transition in each of these stages. So on the next slide, what you'll see is questions that will help in each of those 3 stages. So in the letting go stage, how do you feel? What excites you? What concerns you? How's it going to affect you personally? The neutral zone, you could see the shift start to happen. What are you going to do differently? Now you're sort of starting to look at where are we going? How's it going to affect me personally again is an important one. What are the possibilities? What are the roles I could play? And then in the new beginnings, we want to start to solidify and make things more formal. We want the new normal to become who we are, and our hands firmly on that trapeze bar. What energizes you? What do you want to continue to do? And you'll notice that some of these questions are starting to get at the emotional state of someone and understanding what people need. So as a leader or a manager in an organization or someone who's helping support change happen, why is it important for us to know this? So on the next slide, if you could imagine you have an organization of 75 or 12 or 22,000 employees, and imagine that they're all experience change at the same time, but what's different? You can hit the, yeah, there you go. They're all experiencing transition of that change at their own pace. Many of them are going to be in different places at different times. We can't expect them all to be at the same place. And for any of us who have been a part of trying to make change, I think there's times when we feel like we've communicated over and over and over again and people just don't get it, quote unquote. And I think sometimes as leaders, what we don't get is that people are in their own transition stages and we just haven't connected with where they're at. And how can we help understand what they need in order to get to that new beginning stage? So let's explore what that happens visually. I tried to capture that in this next slide as far as what organizational change looks like from a transition perspective. So there's 7 arrows there. So imagine 7 different employees. So let's say, for example, you've decided to use Kotter's 8-step process as part of your change management plan for your organization. And as you start to go through these steps, which, by the way, are not always this linear, this is just for the ease of putting it out there, because there's a lot of things that happen and you go back and do them again. But for each of these individuals, you can see that arrow is looking at their trajectory of their transition phase. So person A might be an early adopter. Some of us love change. We love what's new, especially if we're a part of it. And if I'm an early adopter and I've got this and I'm onto I want to be part of the coalition, I'm really excited. That's very different than person B, who might not be bought in, might not understand it for whatever set of reasons. For that person's going to take a long time to get there. And so it's very important to understand that we're just not all transitioning, and so it's really important to understand that. I worked with an organization, had a lot of technical people working in the organization. They were going through massive change, and one of the mistakes that they made was that they didn't pay attention to this piece of the puzzle. They kept marching through their change management plan, but they didn't pay attention to the people, and they started moving people around to satisfy certain pieces of the plan without paying attention to the fact that they started swinging people back and forth between that letting go and neutral zone, and people would start to get to a new beginning in the part of the organization they were at, and then they'd throw them into another part of the organization, and it just was incredibly challenging. People started just looking to survive within the organization, and it sort of things started to fall apart. And so it can be so important to pay attention to that. So, secret to success on the next slide in real estate is location, location, location. I would submit to you that secret to success in change management is paying attention to your people, people, people. Once you have that change plan in place, ensuring that you are attending to people, you're attending to their transition and ultimate commitment to the change. It's not just a flavor of the month then. It's not just something that, oh, we're going to wait it out because management's got something else coming along the line. It's not really a mystery. It's hard work and it takes a lot of time. And I think sometimes folks, investing in our people, we talk about how important it is, but it's really a tough thing to put the time and resources and energy into it. But the key is really investing in our people and addressing individual concerns, developing strategies to resolve them throughout the process. Those are crucial aspects of sustaining successful change. And so what is it that we as people who are involved in making change happen, what do we need to do for ourselves? How do we show up? Let's go on to the next slide. This is where the emotional intelligence piece comes in. It really is starting with know thyself, which, again, comes historically from many centuries ago. And I would submit to you that a high emotional intelligence is really a pipeline to knowing how to act versus react and managing yourself and ultimately your relationship with others and helping others through their change and transition process. So IQ, what we know about IQ is it's a score that we derive from standardized tests and is designed to assess human intelligence. And it has actually been traditionally thought that it was a fixed number, but through recent research, neuroscience research, what we found is there is some plasticity in the brain. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot that we know yet that we can do with IQ. Emotional intelligence is a set of emotional and social skills that influence the way we perceive and express ourselves, develop, and how we maintain our social relationships, how we cope with challenges, and we use our emotions in a meaningful way and effective way. So as I rambled through all of that, did you catch the word skills when I was talking about emotional intelligence? Here's the cool part for me about emotional intelligence is we can develop that. And so we can be more effective around that. On the next slide, you'll see a photo of a guy whose IQ is 137. That's pretty high. He's pretty powerhouse as far as intellect. But currently right now, if you look at his emotional intelligence, it's about at a 0. He's just not being very effective with whoever he's talking with, and the impact on him and his relationships is probably not great, and he's probably not able to leverage much of that high IQ right now. And this would be that amygdala hijack that folks talk about. And emotional intelligence, just from a corporate perspective, what we know from, for example, from Center for Creative Leadership is that they've identified in their research that deficits in emotional competence or intelligence are the primary reason for executive derailment. And so if we're in a position where we're asking people to make change, which may feel awkward, weird, uncomfortable, strange, and difficult, the more we are able to access how we relate to other people, the better we're going to be at really creating effectiveness in that which we're trying to accomplish. So on the next slide, what you'll see is some of the core pieces of emotional intelligence. It's a combination of awareness, of self-awareness and management of our own emotions and relationships with others. And there are several books and assessments and models out there around emotional intelligence. And the core pieces for all, and they break them down into things like empathy and self-regard and assertiveness so that you can actually look at some behaviors about how you can increase your skills for that. And there are 360s available as well. But the core basic pieces of it include self-awareness, which is, am I aware? Am I aware of my own emotions? Am I aware of, when I have shortness of breath? Is my body tense? How am I uh, acting, or am I reacting in the moment? And what is the impact that that's having on others? And then looking at, it all still starts with that self-awareness piece, and then self-management. Am I aware of how my emotions are impacting others in either a positive and or a negative way? And can I start to manage those pieces of myself? And then you'll see the social awareness, obviously my ability to read and work with others. And can I read in a conversation with just you and I? Can I look at what's going on for you in the conversation, and can I manage that relationship between you and I? Or am I with a team, or am I with a large part of the organization, and can I get my finger on the pulse of what's going on? We are emotional creatures, and oftentimes it's hard to measure that, and yet it's important for us to understand the crucial part that plays in understanding how am I going to lead a group of folks who are struggling in the neutral zone through a change management initiative that's going on. Working with a client right now, and there's some significant change going on. They've been purchased by another organization, and there's not a lot of trust right now in the way the new management is saying things are going to be. They haven't seen it yet, and so it's tough to build trust when you're not having those open conversations and connecting with where people are at. All right, next slide. We're coming into the home stretch here so that we can make some time for questions. Peter Drucker was a management consultant, and towards the end of his very long and distinguished career, I think it was after 50 years or so of working as a management consultant, he made this statement: "I no longer think that learning how to manage other people, especially subordinates, is the most important thing for executives to learn. I'm teaching above all how to manage oneself." And I would submit that that's such a powerful lesson for anyone who is managing a change or part of a change initiative as well, in order to help understand how can I help others be more effective. I need to start with me. I need to start with managing my own strengths and my own liabilities. I had one client who I was working, coaching with, and this individual was technically extremely competent, brilliant, could see 5 miles down the road ahead of everybody else, and was being asked to lead some changes, and understood the concept and theory of change, but as far as executing it with people, it wasn't going so well. And there were some personal costs, some professional costs, health, relationship, effectiveness, all of that. And after spending some time exploring emotional intelligence and his own emotional intelligence, and looking at taking his skills and really looking at increasing his abilities around that, he has significantly increased his own personal effectiveness, his personal wellness. He's received a promotion and is just doing tremendously well. And so and leading tremendous change within his organization. And so I just encourage folks to look at that as a way to really help, especially for folks who are in leadership roles. On the next slide, you'll see a yellow umbrella and a bunch of black umbrellas. And within the platinum rule, within the golden rule, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And what I would submit is that especially in change management, we want to practice the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Because again, think about it, if you're all the way into the new beginning section of that Bridges model, and I'm way back in the letting go, but you keep pushing, it's going to be a bit disastrous. It's going to be really hard because I'm not in a place where what you're saying is going to connect or necessarily resonate with me. So the next slide, Albert Einstein talks about, you can go ahead and hit the next, talks about the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. And he talks about how we've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And I would maintain that, again, through my work with organizations, what I have found is that working across industries and organizations of all sizes, that those organizations that pay attention to both the smart side of the business, the strategy, the finance, etc., as well as the organizational health of the people, what the people need, the culture, etc. Those are the folks who have the enduring advantage as far as sustaining a healthy organization. And to sustain a healthy organization, by definition, means you need to be able to ride through and without much collateral damage, get through your changes that are going to happen. Southwest is a great example of an organization that has been talked about a lot by a lot of folks. They had 44 quarters of consecutive profits, and after 9/11, they're the only airline who didn't lay anyone off, which is remarkable because they have planes that they have to pay for the same gas as everybody else, and yet their focus on culture and people allowed them to sustain through change and crisis numerous times over and still come out the other side in a very healthy, profitable way. Next slide. So let's start to wrap up. So I would maintain that to provide successful and sustainable change, we need to apply a change model and follow it through till we get to our new normal. And then that's a critical part of the success, is following it through all the way. And I think it was once said that everything can look like a failure in the middle. So don't abandon your change model just because it's not working right away. I would say take a look at, are you understanding the 3 stages of human transition? Are you looking at what's going on with all of those people in the organization? And then strengthening your own emotional intelligence so that you can understand where people are at and what they need. And those 4 bullets are just reiterations of the slide that we saw earlier. Improving your own self-awareness, your ability to manage your own emotions and tune into others and engage effectively with others. Next slide, a little bit of humor wrapped up in some wisdom for us. Many of you are familiar with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I just thought this was kind of a fun slide since we were talking about change. And it's also consistent with a lot of the research that you'll find in stress management writings and research, as well as Stephen Covey's seminal book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, where he talks about increasing your focus on what you can control will, in fact, increase your influence on others and decrease your own stress. And so before we shift to Q&A, real quick, just this slide, we won't park on this too long, but it'll be up in the recording for you guys to look at. There's a list of reading resources there for you that hit a lot of the content that I covered here. Feel free to email or call me if you have any questions. And then of the things that we offer as far as tools, the one thing that I would like to highlight real quick is the change simulation, which on the next slide you'll see. It's a one-day workshop where you take a year-long journey through an organization and you actually interview the people in the organization and make some changes, and you get feedback, and you either save or kill the company. But in the meantime, you're learning about change and how we effectively do that, and how do we get buy-in without any risk to your actual business. And with that, we're done. And so thank you again very much for the opportunity to share my learnings with you folks. We do have one last poll, which if we could throw up while folks send in questions, Jeff, I would appreciate that. And this poll is as much for you folks as it is for me. I'm just curious about which you feel is your greatest challenge And that sort of just helps me in general understand where folks are at. It's also, as an educator, I want you to be thinking for yourself about, gee, where's the area that I really need, where's my growing edge for myself as far as where do I need to put a little focus. And so with that, Jeff, I turn it back over to you.
Awesome, Melissa. Thank you so much. I think obviously all professionals know how change is important, but incredibly difficult. And I think you've laid out some really great thought-provoking material for people to try to implement today. And I also have to say that arm folding exercise was one of the most powerful and quick demonstrations about the difficulty of change. If you didn't invent that, well, anyways, I think you should patent it and sell it because it was really great. We've got some great questions that are coming in. I'll tell you what, I'm actually going to go back a little bit so people can copy down your contact information if they haven't already. But thank you for those of you who are typing in questions. Leslie chatted in fairly early on with a great question. Melissa, a lot of what you talked about today was investing in people and about how it's the people who make the difference in successful transitions and organizational change. Leslie's question is, what's the one thing that management can do to make investing in people a reality? It seems like it's a lot easier said than done.
So the question is, what's the one thing management can do to invest in their people?
Invest in their people. It's obviously there's, I think, can be challenging for organizations to make that first step.
Yeah, I would say getting clear on what it is that they want to invest in with their people. Like how does it tie into their business? I would remind all of us that a Gallup organization, in their tens of thousands of people that they've researched with their Gallup their Gallup poll, what they found is people don't leave organizations, they leave managers, they leave their leaders. So I would say if you're going to invest in people, invest in the people that have impact on the other people in your organization. This DuPont project that I talked about, one of the brilliant, I didn't do this, I didn't create this, I was just part of the delivery team, but the folks who created it, it was just brilliant. All of the managers had to go through the same workshop with everybody downline from them. So if you had 5 people who you managed, you went through whenever those 5 people went through. If you could bunch them all together, that's great, but if they were spread out, you would go through it. So if you had people, a lot of people reporting to you, you went through that workshop a lot. And I think the important piece to that is because the managers impact so many people. And I would say, so to get concrete, what can they do? Make the time to listen to your people, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's focus groups, whether that's Friday pizza with the CEO, whether that's a culture survey of the organization. One of the powerful tools that we have found with our clients is having a metric that you can come back to, like a culture survey, get a baseline, do some change initiatives, and then come back to that culture survey again in a year, 18 months, 24 months. You can start to see where the shift happens, big picture. But I would say, whatever you have at your fingertips as far as resources, just start asking and listening to people. And I would also add that as a leader and as a manager, what we permit, we promote. And if you also, if you provide people the permission to come and give you honest feedback and you're willing to listen to that, that word will get out that you are willing to listen to folks. So that was a lot of different answers. Sorry.
That's great. Thanks. Ash has written in with a question about experience he's having at his company. I'm going to paraphrase because it's a little bit long, but long story short, Ash's company was recently bought out, his company recently bought out another company. The new folks that, of the company that was acquired are afraid to take on more work. Ash's question is, what's an effective way to convince employees that they can handle a higher workload as the main organization seems to do about 5 times the volume with the same amount of office staff? So obviously sort of an emotional thing, but what would your suggestions be for how to get started on that kind of a change?
2 things. One, I would I would go into inquiry mode and I would start listening and I would go and find out I would try and find out where the fear is coming from. Is it just because their culture was that way and they don't want to change and they're just comfortable where they're at? But really find some ways to ask some questions of folks in a way that you can get some honest answers. And then the other thing that I would point to is Daniel Pink's research around motivation, and he wrote a book, Drive: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And what he found was what motivates us as humans is not the carrot and the stick most of the time. It's purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And so if there are folks that aren't motivated, I personally would maintain that you can't motivate anybody else. You just can't motivate me. You can create the conditions or you can spark my motivation, but you can't make me motivated. So if it's purpose, autonomy, and mastery, connecting with those folks in the newly acquired organization and find out, are they clear around the purpose? Are they are do they have the autonomy to do what they'd like? Are they looking all of us want to master things. That's part of what drives us as humans, and so I would use that also.
Great. Michael typed in with a comment, not a question, but he wants you to know that was great, Melissa. Loved it. So thank you, Michael, for your feedback. Sam has asked a really interesting question, which I think is going to need to be our last one. As a person changing within a company, do you have any suggestions of communication tools or tactics for someone who feels like they are trying to help with change, but don't feel like they're being heard?
So I'm assuming this person is a part of a change this person is trying to help make change but isn't being heard. Is that right?
Exactly.
Find out who you can connect with and find out what the purpose is, what the direction is. And it's about relationships. It's about people. It's about connecting with, if you're clear on where the organization's trying to go, align the changes that you're trying to offer with how they're going to help support the direction that the change is going to go. And if he can identify some of the barriers that the change he's suggesting or the ideas he's suggesting would mitigate, then that's even better. And some of the resources again on that page, some of those books or some of the websites, all those authors have really robust websites with lots of great information. So there might be some things there that might be able to help. And again, if he has any further questions, you can shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great. And Melissa, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we have a lot of questions we're just not going to get to today. Thank you, everybody, for your good questions. Maybe we can move this to our LinkedIn group. Melissa, would you be open to that if we put
Absolutely.
a post
Yep.
on our group? All right, I'm going to make sure that you're a member of our group. And for everybody who's on the call, make sure you join the LinkedIn group called Boston University Alumni. It's got about 33,000 members with some great career conversations that are happening. Let's take the Q&A there. Sorry we didn't get to your questions, but Melissa, thanks again for your time today. This was really fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much, Jeff, and thanks everybody for your questions. It was great, and have a great day.
And I also want to thank all of our guests for participating today. We've got several great webinars coming up on our schedule, with the next one being October 28th. We've got a fantastic presentation called The Job Search for Experienced Alumni. You can sign up now for all of our scheduled sessions on our website at bu.edu/alumni. And as always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar like this for the BU community, please feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you again, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be.